So, hey, everybody, welcome back to the Brand Design Masters podcast. I'm your host, Philip VanDusen, and I'm here today with James Martin. And James lives in Southampton in the UK and is the founder of Made by James and also the co-founder of BabyGiant Design Company. He grew up a creative, developed his skills in illustration, became a teacher, and then a tattoo apprentice. After 15 years in the design industry, he's now focused on brand identity, logo design, and nurturing new designers to find their path in the creative industry. His clients include musical heavy hitters like the Chainsmokers, Michael Ray, Carter McLean, as well as other brands including Bishop Slayer's Oyster Stout and Plastic Freedom. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to Michael Janda, who's a mutual friend of ours, who actually introduced James and I on Instagram and suggested James come on the show. So thanks, Mike. And James, welcome to the show.
Phil, it's a pleasure. And yeah, big old Mikey Jandaruni. He's a great human. So what a lovely connection that is we both have. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to chat.
Cool. Well, why don't you just give our listeners just a little tidbit about your personal life to kind of help them get to know you a little bit better?
So a little tidbit about my personal life.
Yeah.
I stopped drinking. That's pretty big. I'm sober. So that's a big thing for me, being an English lout. You know, we love a binge drink on the weekend. So yeah, I'm now 5 months sober, and it's helped life tremendously. So there you go.
Well,
That's
I'll
my
say
little
something
tidbit.
that I've never shared before. I am actually 33 years sober. So
Love that.
I got a little time on you, but I totally understand where you're coming from. It just happened to me a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a game changer for me, I
Yeah,
must admit.
it absolutely is.
It's really changed everything. So yeah, congratulations on 33. I'll try and catch you up. I will catch you up.
Yes, that'll be great.
Yeah.
We'll have to after we get off, we'll have to have a little conversation about that.
Yeah, love that.
Okay, so you started off, we have something in common in the fact that we both started off as teachers. I actually have my master's in painting and started off as a fine artist and started teaching, drawing, painting. So you started off a teacher. Explain a little bit about what that was like.
Tough.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was tough. I think
I
I
feel you.
think yeah, I think I was too young at the time.
Mm,
So when I came, I was kind of fresh out of college, uni, wanted to do teaching. I thought that was good. I thought that was my mission. So I was early 20s and got a design agency job, and then still did some teaching then as well. But I think I was just too young. I didn't know enough. I wasn't ready for that responsibility, and I knew straight away. I knew when I was in there. I was teaching art and design to 11, 12, 13 year olds, and I was only 10 years, just over 10 years older than them. So I think the age gap was a bit of a problem. My mindset, I was very different. I was at 20, I was a very different man to what I am
yeah.
almost 20 years later today. So yeah, I think teaching's always been there for me. I love sharing and giving time, but I just think back then it wasn't the right thing for me. It wasn't the right situation. Life wasn't aligned quite right for it yet. But I think that's maybe why I'm slowly dipping back into it now with a bit more. I know myself a little bit more, and I know my voice, and I know how I want to talk to people and share with people. So, yeah, I think finding myself has allowed me to be a bit more comfortable with that slight coaching educator kind of role that I'm trying to play at the moment. So,
Yeah, and you also have a
yeah.
lot more experience, a lot more. You're road tested now, and you have more, more to share of real value to
Oh,
creators to help them in that journey, right?
100%. Yeah, I've made many mistakes that I can share openly, and I think that's the fun stuff, isn't it? It's the learning by doing and failing, and then being able to apply that moving forward has been. I've always been a big trier. I've never been scared of trying stuff, and I've never been too scared of failing. It's obviously always there. There's always the chance that it's not going to happen, but I'd much prefer to try than sit back and go, what if? I'm not really a what if kind of guy. So I've always had this quite bolshy nature of just going straight at it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So it's always a good thing.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about some of the challenges a little bit later. And then you jumped into being a tattoo apprentice. So what's the tattoo industry like?
Tough again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm personally quite heavily tattooed, and I think when I was going through my searching phase, we'll call it. What do I want to be? Where do I? I knew I wanted to do something creative. Whether it was teaching art, tattoo artist, creating art, drawing. I've always been an illustrator and drawn from a very, very young buck. And so it was just one of those things where I was working at an agency again at the time, and it was something I was doing. It's like a side hustle because I loved getting tattoos. So I thought, well, I must want to be a tattoo artist. Maybe that's what I want to be. But it wasn't the case at all. Again, I knew very early on that, you know, something that you have a passion for doesn't necessarily have to be what you do for the rest of your life. And I think I was happy to leave that where it was, which is something that I enjoy myself, but not something that I want to dedicate
Mm.
my life to. And I don't think I was, sometimes quite early on, you think, I just don't have, you know, don't have enough about me to continue to a place where I'm going to be good enough to be as good as I want to be at this. I
Mm.
don't have that drive to do that in that particular space. And I knew that luckily within a year. So I was kind of like, done it. At least I've tried. Move on. Go
And
back to
so,
design.
so how did you move on? What was the next fork in the road? What did that look like?
Agency.
Agency.
Yeah, that was so. It was agency work, working for a company called Irish Media, which are unfortunately no longer around anymore. But yeah, so it was. They used to build a lot of tech. It wasn't like your traditional design agency. It was more of a kind of, I suppose, an entrepreneurial space within the tech industry. So it's creating like messaging apps, and creating all the branding and graphical elements for them. So the owners would have their own projects and also work with other agencies and do work for other companies, but they would also have their own personal projects, which they would then sell to people. So it was heavily, doing a lot of that work and then working for other people. And that kind of was you know, my first insight into the design world of like how it works, pricing, speaking to clients, client meetings, deadlines. Before that, it was I just draw and I want to draw, and it's great. And I'll go and get a tattoo of that drawing I did. This is great, and I'll make loads of money. But then, yeah, the real world hit me hard in the face, and it was great. I mean, I've always been a firm believer that. I know it's slightly different now. We're talking like 15 years ago. I know it would have been slightly different for you growing up as well. But I was always taught, agency work is such a good foundation for a designer of, learning the trade. But obviously nowadays with social media and everything, it's just straight to freelance when you're like 18, 19. And I'm like, if I had done that when I was 18 or 19, I would not be a designer anymore. I would have just given up.
Yeah. And you don't use, I mean, and that's a realization I've come to really in just the last few years, actually, because I spent my first 15 years in the fashion industry on the client side and then made the switch to agency about, 15, 20 years into my career. And then at that point in my career, learned about strategic branding and client work and proposals and, pitching and all that sort of stuff that was actually very late, but I understood the client side really deeply. So that totally helped me in the agency world. But so, and now so many people do make that jump or want to make that jump into independence right away. And they don't have that history of understanding the inner workings of an agency and finance and the whole business side of it. Right. So how long were you in the agency world, and is that where you learned your business understanding?
100%. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it's where I learnt the mistakes. I've always been quite curious, which has always helped me not all the time, when it comes to fights down the local pub, that's never a good time to be curious. But, when it comes to kind of like learning industry and design and all the rest of it, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem nowadays is this kind of shortcut to a creative freedom life is painted across social media as this very accessible world. But it's not really enough to be a creative. It's not enough to be just good at drawing, or it's not enough to be just a great logo designer or a letterer or a brand strategist. Because if you don't know how to market, know how to price, know how to sell, know how to do all these other things, you're going to be lost. So I mean, agency work was integral to my development. For my own business, but even now starting my own personal brand, what I've learned over the last, decade, 12 years of having BabyGiant Design Co. And then 5 years prior to that of being at the first agency, like everything, is kind of all of those early years is what molded this kind of bearded idiot you see today. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all learning, but which is why I always try and tell people, if you can, even if it's a year or 2 years, work within a team, work within an agency, even just things like, I mean, I've always been quite comfortable with talking to people, but that comes through being in front of people and talking to them, at client meetings and sharing your work, and you're proposing your ideas. And I speak to a lot of young creatives now who are scared rotten of speaking to clients, and I'm like, well, how on earth are you gonna get any work if you can't speak to clients? So
yeah, it's kind of it's a double. It's almost like a double whammy, because not only were we like more at the beginning part of social media, so we had more, I think, and to a certain extent, maybe I'm talking out of school, but had more base interpersonal skills. And then I think some of the people coming up now have relied so heavy on texting and social media and digital communication that they don't have as many of those base personal communication skills that we had, working in agencies and with clients and, designers who worked for us or whatever. And so they have not only less of an understanding of how to communicate in general, but also a little less experience in that kind of one-on-one communication that drives everything that we do in working with clients.
Oh yeah, 1,000,000%. Yeah, and I am so thankful that I grew up in a as a designer without social media. I am so happy about that. I remember, I know you're a little older than me, just a tiny bit older,
but just a little tiny,
just a little twinkle, but like walking to go into interviews with my A3 like printed out portfolios, and knocking on doors, to try and get work, and going to see the local pub or the local restaurant and asking them as like a rubbish designer who had nothing to offer anybody, but was just out trying to do something, but nowadays it's like we talked about, it's the shortcut, isn't it? And like you say, especially when it comes to the interpersonal, I think that the kind of interactions you have, like it said, like I remember having to, dial up was kind of, I remember as like internet. There's no point going on the internet because it took too long. So, you used to spend a lot of time going out with friends and talking with friends, and also spending a lot of time with friends and their parents, and that interaction. So there's lots of peer interaction and age gap, which shows, like a lot of respect when it comes to, they are above me, being polite and all the rest of it. Whereas I think now it's kind of like this big kind of washing machine full of just people saying whatever they want to anybody, even if they know them or not, which is crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? So yeah, I am blessed and so thankful that I grew up in a world where, and grew up, important years like 10 to 15, 16, 17, 18, teens, important years where it was about interaction rather than social interaction. I'm so happy, and I'm worried for what's happening, but I'm not going to get all old man on this podcast. So Yeah. It's
Well,
good.
if you're going to get old, man, this is the place to do it. So maybe we will at some point. So you obviously, at some point in your agency life, you either hit a wall or had an epiphany about like time to go out on my own. What did that look like?
So this was from the original agency start the to Baby Giant.
Yeah.
Is
So
that what
when
we're
you
talking?
left
Yeah.
someone else's agency and started your own.
Yeah. I've always been fairly independent, and I mean, my father was, a freelance electrician. Mum was a nurse, so I've always, I've always my mum would work nights, my dad would work during the day, then they'd swap and all the rest of it. So I've always grown up with this quite driven work ethic that you kind of get stuff done to put food on the table and to support your family. I've always grown up with that kind of psyche, and been given that by my parents, which is brilliant. But so watching dad, and his journey, as an independent electrician, and obviously going off and working for other people as contract work and all the rest of it. Um, I suppose it's kind of like been subtly ingrained in me that working for yourself is something. And a lot of my friends have always worked for themselves, and their family members have worked for themselves, and all the rest of it. Um, so for me, I think it was naturally going to happen. I've always wanted to work for myself. I mean, the amount of small business. I mean, I first started my very first agency, Point Nine Design, which lasted about 3 months because it had no clients and then shut down. I've had failed t-shirt businesses, notebook businesses. If you name it, I've tried it and I failed at it. But I've always had this urge to do something for myself. Trying to, whether it was selling my artwork or making a quick side buck on this or on that. I've always had that about me, and I think when so I started Baby Giant at 27, with my mate 80. So we co-founded it together. And I think it was just one of those natural progressions. Like we were both looking for work at the time. I didn't have a wife or family then. I mean, I have a wife now. I don't have a family, but so it was kind of very much like it's almost like this now or never.
Hmm.
If we don't try it now, we're both going to get into another design job, and then we might be there for another 5 to 10 years. Say by that time we'll be married. We'll have mortgages, we might have kids, and all the rest of it. And so I think it's sometimes more difficult to get out when you've got those responsibilities because you're thinking not so selfishly as we were back then. So yeah, we kind of just said, look, let's give it 2 years. If it doesn't work, we can go and find work. There's always work around we can go and find. So we tried. It didn't go well, but we just kept on trying, and it wasn't until year 4, 5 where we started to see some real money come in. We were making enough money. We had clients. We started with none, but then we started to get two. Then it turned to 10, then 20, and then growing and growing. And I think I think I'm. I always. I think it was. I always want to say, like, always wanted to be in the creative world. Always wanted to be a designer. Now it's kind of got through all of those dips, as they're called. Where it's kind of like I either give up and do something else, or I try and get through and see what's at the other end. And as soon as we got through, like year 6, 7, 8, 9, it just keeps doing that now. Like even through COVID, we were very lucky. We grew over COVID. So we're very blessed about that. But I think I think it was just the timing. If anything, if somebody said to me now, start an agency, and to be fair, I'd probably still do it because I don't have kids yet. So I probably would still do it. But I think it was just timing and just a slight urge inside me that I always wanted to have that independence. And luckily, through a bit of grit and determination and resilience, I suppose it's kind of ended up all right.
So now you've developed quite an audience on Instagram. You have, over, I think, 200,000 followers at this point. I mean, big following. So You are now diving deeply into content. Did you use content marketing or developing content to promote your agency, or was that just a natural transition? Was it something that was more conscious in terms of how you went about it? Talk about your early forays into social media and content.
Well, yeah, originally social media for me was pictures of my dog and me drinking a beer around the fire. I thought, and pictures of my food. I'm sure that was what everybody was using Instagram for. Um, but then I read Show Your Work by Austin Cleo. And that book changed stuff for me. And I started to have a different friend group then. I started meeting a few different people who are a bit more driven. And they were always like, oh, you're quite a good designer, and so the mixture of like reading that book, and I wasn't a good designer back then. I was shit. So
But you
don't
believed
listen to
them.
that.
You believed them,
But
and it drove you
they
forward.
exactly. They gave me a bit of
Yeah.
confidence to kind of go, well, maybe, the classic creative in you is like everybody's better than me. I'm not that good. Self doubt, imposter syndrome, all those kind of things. But yeah, read Austin Clear, and then for me it was like social media was a mistake, really, because it wasn't necessarily a mistake, sorry, but yeah, I went from sharing pictures of my dog to reading that book and then thinking, do you know what? There's not really many people sharing, especially within the brand identity and logo space, which was something that I really loved and I was slowly moving into as a niche. There was nobody really sharing sketch work or how they came up with their ideas or their thinking. There was loads of fantastic logo designers and logos out there, but there was very difficult to understand how they got from nothing to something. So I just kind of thought, do you know what? I mean, but for a long time I didn't do it because I was thinking, I don't want people to steal my ideas. I don't want people to steal my unused sketches. I don't want people to do this. And I just decided not to care about that. And through that non-caring and sharing, that rhymes, by the way, by sharing more and more and more, I started to gain an audience who started to enjoy the way I thought, the sketches, and from that it's just kind of grown and grown and grown. And I'm so glad I got over the what I would call ego, 5, 6 years ago now. I can't even remember because that's when Made by James started. Before I was Jamalicious, I changed to Made by James. I thought, do you know what? I'm going to use social media to try and get clients and to share my process. That what it wasn't to gain followers, it wasn't to get likes. It was like,
Get clients.
It's to get clients.
Yeah.
All the stuff I share now is to get clients. I mean, there's not, it's disguised. People might think, oh, you share that for designers, but a lot of clients come, they see my process, they see my work. I don't pitch for anything. They go, I like what that guy does. How much? Let's do it. So everything I do has a plan, and it is to make money. Whether that is now through slightly different now. So maybe whether it's like coaching now or the book or, I've got a logo course that's coming out. All my content is now geared. There's a strategy behind it. It's not just kind of like chuck it out and see what happens. Well, to be fair, at the beginning, there's still a little bit of that going around. But, for me, it was just a natural thing that kind of started to gain traction. And I'm like, what the way I've been sharing, I haven't followed kind of the trends that I've always tried to stay quite true to myself. So it's always quite heavily hand drawn. I show a lot of my sketches, and that's what I did 5-6 years ago. And I've just developed and evolved with Instagram, for example, like with reels or with carousels or whatever. But the crux of it's still there, and it's still, the strategy is to share my work, because I know if I share my work and I put it out there, people are going to see it. And that's either going to be people who want to learn from it, or that's going to be people who want a piece of it. if you know what I mean.
I do.
So
I totally
yeah,
do. And so I mean, I started doing content for the same reason, to get clients, because I'm very much of an introvert. I'd been working in big agency, big industry for 25 years. And then suddenly I was on my own and I was like, I don't want to pitch clients. I also don't want to work with the Fortune 500 who I'd been working with. I wanted to work with smaller companies and entrepreneurs. And I was like, none of my network are going to help me get those clients. I got to do it myself. So that's why I started content. And I just thought, I'll just share everything I know about branding, design, business, and someone will recognize it and hire me to do strategy and design work. And it totally worked. But the interesting thing is that then in sharing all that, I gathered this audience of creative professionals. And so now, and I'm going to ask you about how you manage this, because I just want to frame it on my own experience, which is that I have, I share content for entrepreneurs and small businesses on process and strategy and marketing and all that sort of stuff. But then I also share a lot of information for creatives on career development and finding their own path. And those are two, that's a Venn diagram that intersects in some ways, like this podcast does in certain ways. But they are also different subjects. So you obviously have a lot of creatives who are following you on Instagram and are like hanging on your every sketch to be inspired. But by the same token, you're doing it still, you say, consciously to attract clients. So when you do a carousel, are you gearing that carousel to something a client cares about? Or are you gearing it towards something that a creative professional needs to develop their career or build confidence? How do you find that balance between your audience? Because you have two audiences, essentially, right?
yeah, 100%. But I mean, I've seen the power of the human side of design. So whether it is, so let's take the logo projects I share, for example. Like, my clients are paying me to create content. That's the way I look at it. They pay me to do a logo, but I get to share that to get more work. I mean, it's this beautiful symbiotic relationship. It's fantastic, But I also like to think that the kind of slightly more honest and raw posts that I talk about, I talk about, I was sexually abused as a kid at school, my struggles with IVF with my wife, my process, my thoughts, not always the thoughts that everybody else has, that everybody follows, my personal thoughts. Even that kind of content that I share, I think allows me to be more human. And I think people want to work with real people. They don't want to work with some flashy dude who keeps going on holiday, telling them how much money they're making. People don't like that. And this is what whatever I try and do, I try and be very authentic and honest about who I am. I swear a little bit. I make spelling mistakes. I'm covered in tattoos. I'm not going to be for everybody. And some of the stuff I share will make some people feel uncomfortable. But those are the people that I don't necessarily want following me. If it does, that's fine. You don't have to follow me, or if you don't want to. But also, I want my clients to know who they're getting involved with. So even the stuff that's not design related does paint a very good picture. So when people come and, I mean, I work with people and they're talking to me about some of these posts that I talk about, like their struggles with IVF, or their dog, their dog. When I do a story with my dog in the woods, they're like, "Oh, did you enjoy your walk with your dog?" I think what sharing that stuff outside design, the real life stuff, makes you a little bit more approachable and a little bit more human, and people like that. So so when it comes to content strategy, I am doing it I suppose for a few reasons, or maybe two reasons, is to, if somebody else is going through the same struggles that I am, I hope it helps them. But what it also does is it puts me out there. There's no skeletons in the closet. There's nothing, I'm not hiding anything. What you see is what you get. And what I try and do is I just try and dive into that, because I know it helps clients. If they like me and they like the person I am, they will come and work with me, and they can also see my work. So funnily enough, even though there is two types of content that I put out, they work for both designers and clients. So that's the kind of happy sandwich, I suppose.
Yeah. How do you separate the work that you do on YouTube from the work that you do on Instagram? Do you repurpose a lot across those platforms? Do you do content that's totally geared towards, is your YouTube audience different than your Instagram audience?
Again, like YouTube is, I've always got a plan, Phil. I think that's something that a lot of people should spend more time building as a plan. I've got a logo course coming out in May. The reason I started YouTube a couple of years ago was to get me good on camera. That was the main reason to do it. So when it came to doing the logo course, I was comfortable. I was happy talking on camera. I was happy
Mm-hmm.
being in front of camera. And also it was quite interesting to see what content people started enjoying. Do they like the case studies? Do they like the real life stuff? Do they like the process stuff?
The dog
So
walks.
yeah, the dog walks. There's
Yeah.
always a dog. There's always a dog in my video somewhere. But I think for me, it was YouTube was a part of my bigger plan, which was this logo course. So I haven't actually posted on YouTube for, oh crikey! I mean, COVID didn't help because I actually get somebody into film, and that couldn't happen.
Mm.
So it's been a while since I've been on YouTube, but it's definitely something I'm going to go back to. But the reason I started that YouTube journey was the strategy to get good on camera. And whatever else came out, I think there's maybe like 7,000 people subscribers. And I think a lot of them are transferred from, what do you call it? From Instagram or
Mm-hmm.
Dribble or whatever it is. But the main strategy was personal. It was to get better, purely to get better on camera. That was my strategy to start YouTube, to allow me to build a better logo course. And that hopefully will make me more money because I'm not crap on camera. So that's the plan.
It sounds like the plan worked. So are you monetizing your brand in other ways besides your course and work for your clients? Are you doing brand deals? Are you doing any kind of promotional videos or any kind of promotional spots within the content that you do?
This is a really. I mean, I'm a big listener and a big watcher, and I watch what people do, and I mark down what works and what doesn't. And I see a lot of people get to a certain stage, and then suddenly they're sharing loads of products that are totally irrelevant for quick bucks, or suddenly everybody on the planet is sharing this particular thing, and then obviously making cut affiliate wise. For me, I've tried, and I think I've done pretty well. Like tried to stay away from that with a much bigger plan in place. I've tried to keep it very me. If I share something, I don't. So like I happily share Mike Jander's course and write about it in my email. I happily help my friends out if I really trust them, and I would use it, and I've used it myself. But I don't want anything from that. I'm happy for you just to take that, but maybe when my logo course comes out, you might shout me out. And I think that's the kind of way I'd like to work. Because I've seen people get to 10, 20,000. They start selling everything possible, things with their face on, anything to make a quick buck, and then everything just stops.
Mm.
Everything stops for them.
Well,
And
the credibility changes, especially if you're
I
not
think so.
super careful about what you're endorsing,
100%, and and it's quite see through. You can see that you can see the driver behind it is monetary, and that's all it is. It's not really to help anybody.
Mm.
It's for money for me, or for the person doing it. So I've always tried to stay quite true to my brand ethos, which is kind of honest and open, and I give a lot. Every piece of content, everything that I share on even YouTube, on Instagram, that's all free. That takes me time. I'm not getting. In fact, I'm paying my videographer to create that content for people to watch for free. But my plan is bigger. My plan is to. I've always known that if I can create a space and a voice that people trust, they will look after me in the future. And we're going to find out when this logo course drops. If I get nobody buying it, I'll tell you what, I'll be starting to sell some shampoo or something on my Instagram.
I have a feeling your logo course is going to do well. I just have a feeling, and I'll be happy to be an affiliate for it. To tell you the truth,
there you go.
I
Love
would,
that. Yeah.
and I would promote. The funny thing is, as we were talking, I was like, you know what I should do? I should cut in my the ads that I do on my podcast, like right after what you're talking about. But I mean, even the ads that I do on this podcast, Tubebuddy helped me build my YouTube channel. Like wholeheartedly believe in it. You know, bring your own laptop with Daniel Scott, brilliant Adobe instructor, right? We have a great relationship. We're good friends, killer teacher, right? So, I mean, wholeheartedly understand it. But then, you know, I get pitched all the time for people like, we have a standing desk that we want to send you, and, you know, we promote our standing desk. It's like, dude, do you even watch my channel? Like, do you even understand what I do? So I cannot abide that. I have a question about your agency, though. I mean, sure. I know that developing content and doing courses and all that sort of stuff, because I've done that too, takes a buttload of work, right? And it takes a whole lot of different subject matter experts, from tech people who understand tech stacks and email funnels and how all this tech interacts with each other. Who else do you use besides your partner in your agency? Who else do you use in terms of partners to develop the work that you do, either content or design work?
So I do everything.
Okay.
So I design all the logos. I do all my content. Everything you see has been done by my hand. With reference to like new territory, I mean, I've got my process down. You know, especially when it comes to logo design. When it comes to creating content, I'm creating the content for my client. I'll just share that. But for these new ventures, for example, like I've had a couple of coaching calls with Mike Janda, our mate, you know, and he's helping, you know, I'm learning from these people. I'm a part of like Tom Ross's community, what do you call it? Yeah, kind of closed community where it's all about learning how to build engaged members. So like I said, I'm always very curious, and I don't know I know the content, I know I can shoot the video, I know the course is going to be great, but how do I also get people to sign up to it,
buy it, launch it,
get it? Yeah, exactly. Because that's the thing, the launch strategy behind it. You know, and it's make or break, isn't it? Ultimately, but I have had experience. You know, I've built my own newsletter from scratch. You know, with certain kind of incentivizers, and I know the process of that. You know, I've recently launched a book, so I've had like a very good eye-opening into pre-orders, process, marketing strategies with that. And I think once you start to get into a bit of a groove, you say, well, that didn't work, that worked, do more of that and all the rest of it. And, you know, luckily I'm in a position now where I know a lot of really nice people like yourself who want to be affiliates for the logo James Martin course made by James, and that by itself. But I can reach the people that I've got, and that's like 1.5 million followers that I can get to, straight away. But that wouldn't have been able to happen without building that, I suppose, would you call career collateral and trust. If I was just some chump who never shows up and came to you and said, Phil, I've got a logo course, can you promote it in front of your audience?
And you haven't been giving value to them for 3 years before that, right?
Exactly, yeah. So for me, I mean, I'm definitely going to, like yourself, probably, I'm a big on, like, if I'm going to use something, I will be a part of sharing it, affiliate or whatever it is. But like you, if somebody says, can I send you this, loads of time, because I do like sketches, like time lapses, like I get people trying to send me their camera or their kind of like weird, cool tripod thing, and all I ask for is like 5 posts and a story. And I'm like, I'm just not that guy. And also what I'm using at the moment works perfectly fine. So I don't really just want to get stuff to have to talk about it. But yeah, so I think I've kind of gone off tangent a little bit, but yeah. So when it comes to content, this is what
it's all you.
Does it.
It's all you. Do you repurpose your content anywhere else? I mean, you also, let me segue. Let's talk about your email list and the newsletter. So when in your career arc did you say, hey, I got to develop an email list. And then how did you go about doing that? What did your newsletter look like in the very beginning? And then what was in it? What's in it now?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, well, it started at nothing. I've only been building it probably for the last, I think, 3 years, and I
Okay.
haven't been building it solidly. But so the reason I did it is because I didn't have one, and through lots of research, talking to the right people, I realized how stupid I was. Email is massive. Yeah, that data is so important. So that was obviously just kind of speaking to other design leaders and people who build email lists and all the rest of it. I was just bumbling along as a happy creative, drawing stuff and sharing stuff. And, you know, like I said, like when plans started to, really kind of manifest and like, right, this is where I want to be. How do I get, this logo course has been happening for 5 years. Yeah. So this point in May has been built, was being built 5 years ago. So it's about building, I say, that collateral, that trust, and then it was email newsletters. So the reason I started was I spoke to a friend of mine, Tom Ross. He was like, have you got a newsletter? We got one for BabyGiant, but I didn't really have one for Made by James, and the
Mm.
audiences are slightly different, so I started building one for Made by James. So how that started was basically just a process of hype. I'm going to be starting a newsletter and sharing my thoughts, and it's going to be the place where everything that I is going on in my mind happens there first. So it was kind of building up the suspense, but also like giving them a reason to join. I think giving people a reason to join something is a great way to get them to join. you know, so
How
I
often do you put it out?
put out a newsletter. I'm on holiday at the moment, but it's every Monday,
Okay. And is it
once a
just
week.
is it like a blog post musing? Do you put resources in there? Do you put art in there? What do you
Yeah, so basically,
feature other
I've got
artists?
yeah. So what I've got is I've got a what I call my logo designer's black book, which is basically a depository of free downloads. So I've created like little PDFs, little 5-6 page PDFs on like how to create custom type, how to price work as when you're starting out as a creative, little case studies. Basically, lots of I think there's about 8 to 10 on there. So when they sign up, they get access to all of that free stuff. So
Mm,
that's the kind of lead magnet to get them in.
yeah.
But obviously, when the stuff that I'm talking about every week is there's a lot of mindset stuff. There might be some case studies on different projects that I'm working on. There's events, obviously, people that I'm speaking to, podcasts, live chats on Instagram. Sometimes I do like what I would call community-based challenges. So I'll put like a little brief out there because the majority of them are logo designers and young creatives looking to kind of find their way in the world. So yeah, it's kind of a nice mixture of fun, friendly musings and value. I always try and leave something that they can take away into their day,
Hmm.
life, work, career. That's something that I always try and base all the content that I create around is what value can they take to use for themselves. I'm not going to tell anybody how to do stuff. I'm going to tell them how I do it, and if they want to take that value out, it's theirs for freebies. So yeah, that's the kind of plan.
Well, James, man, it's been awesome talking to you. And so I want to tie this up with some very quick questions. All right. So we're going to do the rapid fire 10, which anyone's listening to the podcast know I've been piloting this new kind of fun thing at the end, and then we're going to ask the big the big question. And so, you ready for the rapid fire 10, James?
Yeah, dude, but I'm severely dyslexic, so it takes
It's
my
all right.
brain a little bit of time to go. So
It's all
I'll
right.
be as quick
We'll
as I
edit
can.
out the pauses. We'll edit out the silences where you're kind of
There'll be
processing.
there'll be a lot of them.
And
Yeah.
I'll warn you, there's one question in here. I've only been doing this for like 4 or 5 podcasts, but there's one question in here which stumps people. Like there's always like a 30-second pause, and people are like, "Oh no, what?" Like they just cannot like process it. And so I'm going to see if it stumps you, because the last person I did it with, it didn't stump her at all. Like she knew it immediately. Amy McLean like knew the answer to this question immediately. So we'll see. Okay, you ready? Number 1, what's your spirit animal?
Wolf.
Number 2, morning person or night person?
Morning.
Number 3, beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Number 4, dog person or cat person?
Dog.
Dog.
Gotta be.
I know that. What's your secret talent most people don't know that you can do?
I'm very good at sport, or used to be very good at sport. I used to be like county cricket, county rugby, England trialist at cricket. So I was this big chubby exterior now used to be a lot thinner and a lot sportier.
All right.
So yeah, sport. Yeah, I was a very good sportsman.
Okay. Number 6, favorite song of all time?
Dire Straits, The Chain.
Awesome. Favorite place in the world?
UK. Home.
Okay. What's the one thing you would love to master?
Human psychology.
All right. Number 9, who's your hero?
My mum and my dad.
Number 10, finally, what's the one thing that you would tell your 20-year-old self?
Keep going.
All right. Love it. Okay. Final question. Big question I always ask my guests at the very end. Do you have a personal manifesto or some sort of a mantra that you try to live your life by?
Effort is free.
Love it. Wow. You had that at the ready.
Well, I have it at the ready because I've got it engraved on my pencils. I've got it engraved on my ring. It's stuck up on my wall. Yeah. That's
So when did
thing.
that, you're one of the few people I know who has a mantra on their wall. So when did that mantra come into your life? When did that epiphany happen?
It probably was fairly recently. I would say
Okay.
within the last couple of years. I've always, people ask me the question of like motivation, because I do work hard. I do get up. I try hard every day. I'll bust crazy hours, Sorry, my phone's going off. But yeah, for me, it was just all about, I just realized that I can control the effort that I put in. So
Right.
I don't know if you want to, should we talk about this now? Did you hear any of that ringing?
Yeah. Heard it all.
You did. Shall I say that bit again?
Yeah. Say it again.
Yeah. So it came to me a couple of years ago. And basically, yeah, I've always been very driven and worked very, very, very hard. And people like always like, you put so much effort in, and then I realized like fairly recently that basically I could be anything I want to, and the amount of effort that I put in is mine.
Yeah.
I'm in control of the effort. I am in control of whether I get up on time, how long I stay and work. Especially working for yourself. I'm in control of everything that I do. So I'm in control. As soon as I realized I'm in control of the effort, and it's mine to give, and it's free, it just takes me doing it. Obviously, yeah, I know you need food to buy, and if you want to look into it deep down, but effort is free is something that whenever I'm feeling like I can't really be bothered a little bit, I'm like, effort's free, it costs you nothing,
Right.
So go get up and do it. And that's something that I live by every day now.
Absolutely. Love it. So name of your book, name of your course.
Well, I haven't quite labeled the course yet, but
Okay, well, let's start with the book then.
Yeah, so the book is made by James, which is great for me, great for SEO. So yeah, the honest guide to creativity and logo design, and then yeah, the course is dropping in May, and I haven't quite know what I'm going to call that yet. I've got a couple of things, and I've also got a couple of trademark things happening at the moment, so
Okay.
I can't say too
Got
much
it.
stuff. But
Mum's
it's going
the
to be
word.
really, really good. Really,
Okay.
really good.
And I'm going to be affiliate. So
And Phil's going to be an affiliate.
Yeah. So you find it here
make
when he
sure-
launches. You're going to buy it
Love
through
that.
my link.
Yeah, definitely do that.
So James, if people want to engage with you, where's the best place for them to find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, if you look up Made by James into Google, just type that. I'm around, which is really cool. But I mean, I love chatting to new people. So if you want to find me on Instagram, it's just type in Made by James. If YouTube, Made by James. You can come and find me on my website, which is themadebyjames.com. But just type in Made by James. Come and say hi. You'll find me. Just don't type in James Martin. James Martin's the chef, and he's
Not
very
gonna
famous.
get you.
And I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. You're not going to get me. So find
If they
Made
want
by
to
James.
subscribe to your newsletter, how do they do that quick?
They can head, if you just type in www.thelogoblackbook.com, you'll head straight to my sign-up page, or you can just head to my website, and there's a little tab at the top which says newsletter. So yeah, come and say hi. I drop lots of freebies and lots of fun and lots of honesty, which is nice in a world that's not so honest. I like.
So James Martin, Made by James, co-founder of BabyGiant Design Company. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us at the Brand Design Masters podcast. This has been awesome, and we got to make sure to have you back.